Euphoria season 2 finale. Finish a sentence. This episode was
stupid. I don't know, man.
I didn't like this episode very much. There was some stuff in this episode that I thought was Pantheon stuff, and it just the best of Euphoria. And then there was other stuff, like when there's a shootout and they kill a kid. And when there's a Benny Hill, and when there's a Benny Hill bit where everybody runs up on stage and trashes Lexi's play, there's just moments like those where I'm left completely scratching my head as to like what we're doing here, why we're doing this show. And then there's beautiful moments where Rue is talking with Elliot, or when Rue is talking with Lexi. All the smaller, quieter, like actual teen drama stuff, like that stuff worked really well. But the stuff that just really didn't work kind of deflated the balloon for me.
Right. And, we'll go through it all. In many ways, I feel like this was a perfect finale for what this season has been. It totally encapsulated what these last 8 weeks were, which is there were some really, really good moments, like super high quality television and storytelling. And then just like some shit that doesn't make any sense. That's like, what are you doing here? What do you want this show to be?
And all season long, it's been tough to be critical of the show because so much is done so well. The production, the cinematography, the acting, all of that is so good. But sometimes the writing just leaves a little bit to be desired, and that was definitely the case in this episode. Last night I was saying how this episode does feel like it's difficult because you can feel the hand of the maestro conducting the orchestra, and it's very, very impressive. And there are individual elements of this orchestra that are just so good, but just the conception of it to begin with is a little bit flawed and a little bit odd. And I compared it to like Donda, or you can, if you haven't listened to Donda, you could compare it to any album by like a great musical artist that isn't that great. Cause like you can see all of the greatness in it, but it's just sort of a sloppy mess, and that doesn't detract from the genius of it also, but it does detract from the overall experience that the audience gets to have of it. And so leaving this episode, I was kind of hot because so much was so good that the bad stuff just made me angry of what could have been.
Right. I was like legitimately upset because I know how good this show can be, and I can know like with how all the actors on the show, I think, are incredible.
Yeah.
Like they all did a fantastic job this whole season. I want to work with every single one of them.
Yeah. Call us.
But like, I was just upset because I know how good the show can be. I know Sam Levinson can make some like really good shit.
Yeah.
Because he has throughout the series, even just in this season. Like episode 5 of this, the whole Rue running away from going to rehab, I think is one of the best episodes of television I've ever watched still.
It's so good.
And I'm just like disappointed that like we didn't get more of that this year. Like we didn't get more of like, what we know he can be as a writer.
There was a focus issue all season, and we talked about it extensively, so we won't spend too much time on it, but there's a bunch of stuff that just doesn't work. And so, like you said, this episode really does encapsulate this whole season. It was a mess. It was so impressive. It was shot so well. It was acted so well. Let's jump ahead to the elephant in the room, though, the shootout scene.
Yeah, let's just start right there.
Let's go there, because if you're listening to this, you've already watched the episode. That's on your mind already. So last week we leave the episode knowing that Fez did not make it to the play. So we knew something happened. Much speculation about, is Fez going to die? Is Ashtray going to die? Are they going to prison? What's going to happen? Does nothing happen? Does he end up making it at the end of the show? We start the episode this week with Fez, and we get more of that, and then we work our way through that storyline throughout the episode. I was disappointed because I think jokingly I said, what if Ashtray just kills Custer over here?
Mm-hmm.
And then I said, but they couldn't do that because they already basically did that with Mouse in season 1. And then sure enough, Ashtray does it. And then the consequences after that we'll talk about. But just that decision alone, it felt like, again, we were just retreading.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt nothing when it happened.
No, I'm like, because it wasn't shocking at all.
Yeah.
It's because we saw him last episode sit down with a goddamn knife in his sleeve.
Right.
So it's like, okay, you're going to do this thing that we all expected to happen, that we also have already seen this character do before, where he kills someone with a hammer. And the first time it was like, wow, that's kind of crazy. This dude's like ride or die for Fez.
Yeah,
and
a kid just did that.
A kid just did that. And now also I think part of it is too that he looks like 5 years older.
Yeah, that's true.
Now too. But it's just like, I don't know. I didn't care.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, whatever. That seems like a way to get out of this like storyline that they wrote themselves into, that like they don't have an idea for where to go with it. Like, we'll just have the kid who already killed someone kill him.
And I think you hit on the thing that is crucial there. It's a lack of surprise, because like, you know, the Chekhov's gun thing, if you show the gun, you have to have it go off. So they show the knife, you'd expect it to be used, but you have to have some sort of element of surprise or misdirection so that we don't think it's going to get used. Instead, he just sits down at the end of last episode, like you said, with the knife, and we know that he's been, like, all season they've been building up towards his like violent streak, and where is that going to lead him? And so we knew something bad was going to happen, but it felt a bit too expected.
He also doesn't say a single word, which is weird. The whole episode, I don't think he says anything.
I wonder maybe if that's because of maybe like puberty and his voice was just too deep. And they were like, I don't know if we could get away with it. No, but so yeah, he kills homie, and then shout out to Faye for choosing the right side, I guess. That was a really funny bit. When she's like, no, you said Lori killed Mouse. You know, Lori, the drug dealer. She killed him. That was funny. And I felt like that was actually like good payoff for having her in the season, because the whole season she was just sort of there, and so she had to do something at some point. And so in the end here, because I think a little bit throughout the season I was thinking to myself, is she gonna screw over Fez, or is she gonna appreciate the kindness that Fez is showing to her? And she ultimately chooses to appreciate the kindness that Fez is showing her, and makes the right decision and tries to help him as best as she can. So that was good writing. Good job, Sam Levinson. Then the cops, the SWAT team, are about to come in. So then Ashtray darts off to the washing machine and grabs a bunch of guns.
A whole bunch of guns,
gets in the bathtub. Fez tries to stop him. He hits Fez in the head and then closes the door, and he's banging on the door. Ash, open the door. And then the SWAT team floods in, and I'll stop it there, because what happens after this is where like I really draw the line. But everything in this sequence is really good. It felt so much like Good Time by the Safdie brothers. I think I've made this comparison multiple times this season. Like all the drug related stuff, it feels like they're just straight up doing a Safdie brothers movie. And I love that. So it's really good. But again, when we're cross-cutting all of this with a high school play, the stakes just don't match. And I can't emotionally connect to one and then to the other, and then jump back and forth between the two.
Yeah, it's kind of a thing we talked about in like the first episode of this season, where like we don't want this to really become like a drug dealing show, because like the important stuff is like the characters and their relationship to one each other of these high school children. So I think we're like running into a little bit of that issue here, where we have a house getting raided by a whole goddamn SWAT team, and then, you know, there's a shootout.
And you made a wonderful point last night when we were talking about this after we watched the episode, where you were like, I didn't think this was like a gun show.
Yeah.
You could show a gun in most shows. That's fine. But like, as soon as a gun goes off in certain shows, I don't know if I can come back from that. And in this show, I'm not sure if I can come back from not just a handgun being fired. Like if Nate decided to kill his dad or something, that would be stupid also. But like, I think I could recover from that.
It'd also be less stupid than what they decided to do, I think.
Yeah.
But we'll get to there.
But the fact that like bullets are raining and a kid is firing on a SWAT team, like all of that is so significantly different than the Dominic Fike music video scene.
Yeah.
It's so significantly different than like the Jules special episode where she's just talking about her experience. It's so, and I know that these things, they're going to make the claim that like this show is like about reality done in a heightened way, of course, but like it's about what is, some would say, reality, and like these all exist in reality, so of course you could depict them all within one episode or one season or one series. But that's not a good enough argument for me, because you still have to be a storyteller. Like you still have to do you still have to dramatize, and part of that is picking and choosing what fits together and what doesn't. And so all of this, just like as soon as bullets started flying, like I could feel my face just sink, my energy just left my body.
Yeah.
This isn't what we want the show to be.
No, and I think what's also like extremely disappointing about it is if you're going to have this, you know, whole shootout thing where a kid, although like, is he really a kid? Like he's kind of a murderer at this point.
Yeah, he the whole series, he has been a grown man in a child's body. So yeah, it's not like he's like a innocent kid.
What I was trying to get to is like, there's no payoff for this either. Like all this happens and then these are supposed to be like C plot characters in the show. Like, and I don't know, man. It's hard to, I don't know. It's hard to articulate, but like there was no payoff to the A plot characters for what happened with these C plot characters. So like it doesn't matter to me. Right.
We keep coming back to this. And again, any criticism that we have of the show is just like us talking through how to become better writers ourselves. And like I still love the show, and I
enjoyed watching the season, although I thought there were things that were stupid in it.
Right, and so, you know, not trying to throw shade or anything, but again, just like this is something that the show has taught me by watching this season is we realized very early on, like we like Rue and the Rue story more than all of the other stories, and like that's the thing that we need to hang our hat on at the end of the day, and so we need to always come back to Rue. So if you're gonna have a shootout with Fez and with Ash and the SWAT team, it has to ultimately affect Rue in the end of the day. Instead, it affects Lexi, and that's compelling enough. I think that that's all really good stuff. But again, she is, in season 1 at least, a C or D list character.
She's like a D.
This season, she's elevated a little bit, but she's still not in the top tier of characters that we're supposed to be caring about. So Ash's death and Fez's eventual going to prison, that should ultimately affect more than anyone Rue. And maybe it will in season 3. Maybe we'll get like a big Rue reaction to this thing.
Yeah, when they fast forward 5 years later.
Yeah,
she's visiting him in jail.
but like you said, it ultimately doesn't really pay off in a meaningful way for meaningful characters. Jules doesn't know Fez like at all.
No. She saw him at that party and he's like, "Oh, you're Jewel, right?"
Right. He doesn't even know her name. Fez doesn't really know Kat. Fez doesn't really know
Cassie
Maddie.
Or
doesn't
Maddie,
know Cassie. Yeah, doesn't know like really any of the characters. There's very little relationship there. So like, as much as like the audience cares about Fez, and as much as I really do love Fez as a character, and I'm sad to see him go, it doesn't totally work for the narrative because of that lack of relationship that he has with the characters.
Yeah, and I honestly think part of the reason they killed off Ashtray is because the kid got too old. Like,
it kind of felt like that.
It really did feel like that was going on. Also, like, maybe a hot take, but fuck Ashtray. This dude pretended to be dead and then, like, at point blank, shot someone with a shotgun.
Yeah, so let's go to the second half here then. So after Ash and the shootout and everything, it's like really a crazy shootout, but actually before the shootout starts, there's a moment of hesitation that Ash has, and then like a whatever those like flashbang grenades go off, and then he sort of accidentally starts firing and then digs in and starts firing. The decision has been made for him, and he digs in, which I think is sort of kind of brilliant, actually.
Oh, I would have been okay-ish with that.
Right, because that's his whole life. Like, the decision has been made for what his life is going to be. He's going to be in the drug world, and like he willingly goes along with it once that decision's been made. So that's, again, good job, Sam Levinson. Where I totally lose my relationship to Ashtray is in that moment, like you said, when he pretends to be dead and then pops up with a shotgun. We talked about this in the season 2 finale, or we talked about this in the season 2 premiere, how Fez is different from the work that he does. Like, he is a different guy than the person that he plays professionally, and how he has rules, and he beats Nate's ass because you have to follow the rules. he doesn't necessarily enjoy it. He doesn't necessarily think it's a good thing, but you got to do it because Nate totally screwed him over. Ashtray doesn't play by those rules in this episode. Mm-mm. Ashtray pretends to be dead and then kills a SWAT dude and then gets blasted. And in that moment, I was like, obviously you don't want to see a kid die. You don't want to see anybody die under any circumstances because it's just so, death is so sad. But in that moment, I was like, I can't do nothing for you.
Can't defend it.
Can't do nothing for you, son. Ash's death, while cinematically very interesting, narratively doesn't really do much for me. And like, I feel like they sort of just trample on the character by doing that pop-up thing at the end. Because it's not, if you're going to, part of being a gangster in movies is like this legacy of honor that comes with sort of like the mob mentality and with like Joe Rogan tribalism. And, but like there's like a dignity and an honor to the sleaziness and to the scumbaggery and to the murder and to like all of the stuff that really has no honor. But, you know, there's a facade of honor, and Ash makes a choice of zero honor.
And I feel like if he was going to do that, if they were going to have the character, you know, pull a move like that where he pretends to be dead and then murders someone, I feel like he needs to survive after that then. Mm-hmm. As opposed to just dying 5 seconds later. Because, like, otherwise, like, what was it for? Like, I don't know, man.
It was just so that he could be a real gangster and kill a dude. Like, that's, but he already has. So, again, whatever.
He's already killed 2 dudes.
He's already killed some dudes. And then we've talked about this off mic as well, but just the absurdly overdone symbolism of Lexi's letter or whatever that is falling as Fez is like bleeding on the ground and bullets are raining, and then the SWAT team steps on it multiple times,
several times.
Yeah, just way too obvious, way too in your face. So Fez is going to prison for life. Mm-hmm. Ash is dead. He's out of the show. Faye is not going to be in the show. She's gone.
Custer's
gone. Fez is now going to be in prison for life. So the most that we could possibly do is have him in most 2 episodes. Just somebody going to see him and say hi. So that's a shame that we're not going to see Fez, and that his downfall doesn't really have a bigger payoff for the rest of the characters. Because what I loved about the mouse episode in season 1 was how it directly related to Rue. Because Rue was there, and that was intense. And you could see like, hey, Rue, this is the world that you are entering in by continuing to do drugs. And like, death is coming. Like, if you continue down this road, it very much felt like the ghost of Christmas Future. It was like, hey, don't go down this path. And so that had direct consequences and effects on Rue. But this doesn't.
No.
And that's a shame.
Well, let's move on.
Because that's the worst. Well, maybe it's not. Let's talk about Cassie storming the stage. Again, blatant symbolism. She steps on Lexi's playbill as she goes up on stage, and then in slow motion, she gets up on stage, starts clapping, and then she ruins the show. Shout out to Suze for trying to help and trying to fix it.
Big shout out to Suze. Suze has been great these last few episodes,
because she was a one-dimensional character that was like joked on. She's the wine mom. She's always drunk. She's like, it's sort of, it's this casual alcoholism that's like, haha, suburban moms. Mm-hmm. And in these last few episodes, like, she's been a very good mother. Like, for the most part, she has her flaws, everyone does, but like, she's done a really good job in these last couple episodes, and she tries so hard. She's like, this was all part of the play. Can you believe it? Oh, and Ethan plays me. Where is Ethan? You should win an award. And like, just trying to play that off. I really respect that. That's a good mom move. But what I don't respect is Cassie ruining the show, because up to that point, Cassie was not humiliated.
No.
Nate was, and so by extension, Cassie feels humiliated by that. But Cassie was not being humiliated by that play up to that point. So she has really no right to go up on stage and ruin the show for her sister, who she always steals the spotlight from anyway.
Just proving the point.
And so when she does this, again, just like when Ash pretends to be dead and then kills a dude, I totally lost my connection to Cassie. And I get that that's intentional. We're supposed to not, like, she has the line about it. She's like, I could play the villain. I'll be the bad guy.
It's really corny.
It's very corny. And it did feel like the beginning of like a Harley Quinn origin story. even though it's intentional, I'm over it. I'm no longer with Cassie as a character.
Yeah, I mean, I've been out on that subplot this like whole season because I've said it like I think on every single episode of this podcast. It's not interesting to me. Yeah, I don't know. Again, didn't feel like there was a great payoff to it either. Same as you, I don't root for this character now.
Think about this, because at the end of season 1, Cassie's just gone in and got an abortion.
Mm-hmm. What?
And so at that point, I have the most chips in on Cassie that I've ever had, because like I thought her whole season 1 was really interesting with her relationship with McKay, and then ultimately the abortion, and like how clinical and like uncomfortable and scary that scene was. And so when you leave season 1, you're like, I wonder what's going to happen with Cassie next.
Right. And there's this element of the character who's like trying to find out who she is, like outside of like being someone's girlfriend, which I think there's stuff there to chew on. And
right.
Now here we are.
What is her character outside of a relationship? And then at the end of the season, it's like, she doesn't get to have a character outside of a relationship.
No.
So
I will say her face pressed up against the glass there was really funny.
That was unintentional comedy at its best. Going up on stage and ruining your sister's play in front of the whole school is so unforgivable, and I just really hate that for her. And I'm not gonna be rooting for her in season 3.
No.
I will also say I think it's interesting that when they've chosen to have big like climactic moments for this subplot, it's almost always been comedy. This one, again, it's played for comedy when she goes up on stage and the audience is like, show us your boobs, and like just like little lines like that.
That's racist.
That's racist. And so they play this for comedy, and like then Maddie gets up there, she's like, I gotta go put her down, and then they start fighting. And
I'm really disappointed with the like Maddie character too, because I feel like they keep like kind of scratching away and like finding that there's some stuff there that should be explored, and then they just never do it. They scratched
and they found some really good stuff to explore in season 3, and I hope they do, because like season 1, I like Maddie was cool, but like I did sort of dislike Maddie because she represented so much of like a type of person that we would know in high school,
right?
That got everything that she wanted, and like was the most popular person in school, and was just a generally not very nice person. So just like in a very reactionary way, I was just like, I don't like her very much. And then you get some, obviously her relationship to Nate makes it easier to care for her because Nate's such a scumbag. But then in this season, there's like small moments, like when Lexi was talking about how she didn't like Maddie at first, and then she learned about confidence and blah blah blah. And like,
there's that moment with like her and Jules, like in like episode 2, where Jules like, I wish you could see yourself the way everyone else does, and like she has like her after school special with Kat, but I still think it's like revealing about the character who's like actually this really inquisitive and emotionally intelligent person.
Right. Yeah. There's how she wants to have a family, and like and you can, I think what's nice about the Maddie character is like you can be like this badass girl boss, Instagram girl boss, but you could also want to have a family. You can want to have this sort of traditionally sort of domestic femininity as well. And like you can do whatever you want, and it's all good and fair and nice. And so I like the Maddie character, and I just want them to explore her more in season 3. So yeah, I hate the Benny Hill bit. They all jump up on stage and ruin the show, and then run through the halls.
There's that one character who like pops up once a season who's just like, yeah, beat her ass.
Yeah, the one friend that's not in the friend group when it matters most. I'm not a fan of all of that stuff. Let's talk about Nate real quick. It makes sense that he would go talk to his dad, and that would be the button for the season for his character. But it kind of felt like so strange that that's immediately where he goes after the play.
Yeah, I mean, I was really confused by this whole scene here. It like didn't make sense to me.
He shows up. It was really funny. The shot of Cal and all of his friends just like having a good time, and then he's like smiling, he turns, he's got his shirt a little bit unbuttoned, and he's just having a good old gay time, and he's having a great go of it. And then Nate shows up. He's got a gun. Ooh, he's got a gun. And then Nate makes everybody uncomfortable, and then Cal's like, all right, you guys should go. Then they have a heart-to-heart, and I do think that this was a really good Nate scene where he gets to tap into some emotions that we don't usually get to see, and the performance was really excellent. Him and Eric Dane as well. But then he pulls out the flash drive and he's like, remember how I was going to protect you? Just kidding. I'm not going to. Which, like, it doesn't not make sense, but it just, I don't know. Walk me through that.
So for me, like, the actual conversation they had, I'm like, oh, this is good stuff here. And then we get to the, like, flash drive bit, and I'm like, this dude spent, like, the previous episode, or the episode before that, going to his ex-girlfriend's house and putting a gun on her head so that he could get this tape of his dad back. And then he gives the tape to someone else and they destroy it. And now he's like, nah, never mind. I'm just going to release the tape myself. It doesn't matter. And to me, it's like, I just... Because, like, his reason for doing that was framed to us as like, oh, we got to protect the business going forward because he's going to take it over one day. So for me, it's like him doing that and like ratting out his dad, so to speak, like invalidated his actions in the previous episodes. Mm-hmm. And it made like those not make sense. If you want to have him like be like, yeah, I'm just going to, screw my dad over here by releasing his sex tapes. Like that's one thing, but it didn't line up. To me, it didn't line up with what the character had done previously.
Right. And that would be fine if we got a greater moment of realization because you can have a character change their mind.
Right, of course.
Do a total 720. But that's sort of where the confusion comes for me, and like him going straight from the play to his father's. It leads you to believe that while he's watching the play, he makes the decision that his father is not worth protecting, which isn't like a clear piece of the narrative of the play that he's watching. It's like he leaves the play because haha, I'm gay. Like that's, everybody's making fun of me because like I'm a gay football player. And so out of rage and frustration about his sexuality, he leaves the play, and you can sort of piece together things like, oh, okay, so he's mad about his sexuality. He's mad about his repression. Why
he blames his father for that.
He blames his father for that. He's going to go find his father. He's going to backtrack on the protecting him thing, and he's just going to finally go get revenge because that's what matters most. But you have to kind of fill in those pieces by yourself, and not in a way where like they give you the clues to do so, in a way where they sort of just skipped over it. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, there's a lack of connective tissue between where we were and where we end up, like you said. Now, you're probably wondering, hey, this is a show about a character named Rue. And a character named Jules also.
Who?
Why haven't we talked about those two characters? Well, it's because the show forgot about them for much of the episode. But when they do come back to Rue, it reminds us of why we love Euphoria.
All the Rue scenes are the best part of this episode, much like the whole season has been.
Without question. We get a little flashback with Elliot. Rue sees Elliot behind her at the play, and then she's like, a few days earlier. And at that point, I was really mad at the show. So I was like, this is stupid. Why are we... But then Dominic Fike just charmed me enough to love the scene.
People hated this scene on the internet.
People are also stupid and dumb.
That's true.
So Dominic Fike gets a little music video courtesy of Sam Levinson. And it's a beautiful song, beautiful acoustic guitar.
Yeah. This scene, like, made me upset at how the show underutilized Dominic Fike this season, especially in the back half of the year, because he seems like he is so incredibly talented, and like he's a really good actor too. Soulful actor, like super charismatic, and like you just like authentic, like you believe every word that he's saying. And I would have loved to see more of this character this year. And I think, the song was maybe a little long.
Sure.
That's a fair criticism of it. But
and also, when you have a song and you're like, I've been working on this, and then you do like a full 4 minutes of it, and then at the end you're like, it's not quite finished. It's like, get out of here, dude. Stop it.
Yeah. But like, I really enjoyed the scene. I think the song was sweet. I think where they like leave off with the characters too, where he's like, do you think we can be friends? And she's like, you're the one who said we're no good for each other. Like, I think it's I don't know if that is like the end for these two characters going forward. But like a real nice moment, I thought, like really good scene.
That's just good storytelling. That's I would have, like you said, I would have liked to have had more of him in the season. Because if it is the end, then that's a shame, because we've missed out on a lot of fun stuff.
You can come be in our projects.
Yeah, exactly. Dominic, just call us. But that was a beautiful scene. And I mentioned this to you off mic, but the biggest portions of this episode, the shootout, storming the stage, all of that, and the music in this episode is so big and so orchestral, and it's this giant opera, and Euphoria is sort of an opera. All of those scenes, while they don't necessarily work for me, they do enhance these sorts of scenes, because it's so loud and bombastic and insane that it makes the quieter scenes feel even more quiet. And it felt just like a scene stripped right out of a indie movie. And it was just beautiful. It was just the simplicity of filmmaking stood out to me, because there's no music other than what Elliot is playing, obviously. And the shots are just very simple. It's not these wild 360 spinning set, like lights altering sort of a thing. It's just close up on Elliot, close up on Rue, and we hold on those close-ups for long stretches, and we just experience like the human soul of these characters, and it's very beautiful stuff.
Right. And I think, number one, Zendaya is so terrific.
Yeah.
The way she can like communicate emotions and feelings without saying a word, tremendous. But I totally agree with your point. Like, to me, this show is at its best when it's the most simple. Oftentimes I think the best scenes of this show are just like real bare bones, like two people sitting in a room talking. It's not stuff that, gets popular on the gram.
No.
Doesn't get popular on TikTok. But like, I think that's like that's what Sam Levinson did so well, like this season, the series in general, but like this season, really good stuff when he just like keeps it simple.
Yeah. And that's the thing about Euphoria, I think that's so excellent, is it provides you that contrast, because it is so big and it is so small, and both of those things can coexist. I'm not talking about like shootouts and plays, like that doesn't work for me, but like in the filmmaking, they can go insane, sicko mode, just nonsense, Travis Scott level music video shit. And then they pull it back and it's just two close-ups, no music, no flourish, just a grainy image, and some nice lighting and some beautiful acting. And that contrast allows for each of the two things to work at its best. Because if you watch just a regular drama where it's all of those small talking scenes, it gets very boring. You get tired of it because there is no contrast. If you watch just a show where it's all candy coated, eye candy nonsense, like that'll get boring as well. It's the fact that we can oscillate between the two and bounce back and forth, and they enhance each other and they make each other better. And that definitely works in this scene, and it definitely works in the scene with Lexi, which I think is one of the best scenes in the entire series.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Again, it's played so simply. It's just shot of Rue, shot of Lexi, punch in a little bit on a close-up every now and then, and they're just bearing their souls, talking about their fathers and rekindling their relationship. And it is a part of the play, so it's not really the reality of the show, but you can tell
might as well be. And you can tell Rue's reaction to the show is similar to that of the character in the play's reaction to the play. So one, it's just a beautiful scene about beautiful subject matter, but two, like I said to you off mic, it's so humanistic, and it's so aspirational to believe that you can rekindle a friendship like that, because everybody has friends that they're really close with when they're young, and then they start to grow out of those friendships when they hit high school or college or whatever. And it's sweet because it's just the idea that like you haven't lost the friendship. It's just might not be a part of your day-to-day life anymore, and that's fine, because you still meant so much to each other when you meant so much to each other, and you always will. And the idea that you could rekindle that, and you can start anew and or pick up right where you left off is really sweet. And I think that's like so different from the, like you said, the TikTok or the Instagram version of the show. That's the stuff that's just like, if we're putting scenes from TV shows and movies into a sort of a Bible for
future races to see once humans are gone and dead. That would be a scene I would put in there because I think it's just beautiful, and it reveals so much about the human condition and about friendship and about relationships. And I think it's really, really top tier stuff. I think Sam Levinson's on his shit in this scene.
Yeah, it was, my favorite scene that I've seen. Wow. Of any show in the last at least year, probably longer than that. But I was very emotional watching this scene. My father passed away when I was younger, and like I don't talk about it a lot, like outside of just jokes, like basic one-line jokes about it. But like there's a lot of like emotions and feelings there that I don't feel like I can talk about, and it was like nice to see those reflected in a screen. I'm like, oh yeah, I like really connect to what's going on here. It was such a beautiful scene.
Again, this is the show at its best because the show aims to, like I said earlier, reflect the reality of teenagers in a heightened way, but also in an authentic way, because it's talking about subject matter that a lot of shows aren't. Like this show really dives into the opioid epidemic. It really dives into addiction at a young age and all sorts of stuff that we've been talking about all season. But those core relationships with fathers is also what I think the show did so well this season. It's Nate and his father. It's Lexi and her father. It's Rue and her father. The relationships with these fathers are probably the best element of the show in terms of like the characterization of these people. And so this scene really was like, it was top tier, and it was everything that you could have asked for. And again, even though it's not in the reality of the show, it's in the play, it still hits in a authentic and realistic way, and it's just beautiful. I thought it was so good.
Yeah, and again, Zendaya's incredible in this. Maud's incredible in this. Like she showed that like she has like actual acting chops to her.
Right. I said to you last night, like it's not just like she's good for the daughter of famous people, but she is good just period. And it's not that I was ever doubting that, but you see a kid that is you see someone who's the child of famous people and they start getting big roles, and you know why they're getting big roles. It's because they have at least enough talent and they have the connection to be able to get into those big roles. But that doesn't mean that they're the best for the part. It doesn't mean that they're the best actor. And so you kind of really have to like prove yourself in order to win me over if you're related to somebody that's like as famous as Judd Apatow or Leslie Mann. And in this scene, it really in these last two episodes, she totally convinced me that she's deserving of any parts that she ever gets, because it was really, really impressive acting. We've talked about everything pretty much that happens in the episode. I just want to talk about Jules for a second, because Jules didn't happen in this episode, really.
This season, really?
Yeah, I was pretty disappointed. Oh, actually, you know what? How about we do this? That's what we'll do. We'll now break from this episode. We'll talk about our thoughts on the season and where we want to see season 3 go. Then we'll wrap it up. I think my biggest disappointment from the season was the lack of Jules, because I thought Jules was one of the most compelling characters in season 1, and I thought that there was so much room to grow. That relationship between Rue and Jules would be so important, and ultimately we didn't get, in my opinion, enough of Jules. So that's one of my biggest disappointments from the season. Do you have like a thing that just really stuck out to you as like a major disappointment?
I think I'm right there with you on that. Like there was so little of that relationship this season, especially like the back half of the season. Like Jules was hardly in it at all. And I agree with you. I think that's such like a compelling character. I think it's one of the most compelling characters in all of television right now, and just criminally underutilized this year. I also think my other disappointment is just like, if you've listened to any of these episodes so far, you know that I was not a fan of the Nate Cassie storyline.
Terrible.
I don't think that, like, if you want to have that in there, fine, but I think that's more of a B or C plot. And a lot of the time this season, it felt like that was like the A plot that they were running with. And I don't have the breakdown of screen time in front of me, but it feels like that storyline got a lot more run than some of the, more compelling ones.
Yeah, I think if I were to sort of sum both of those criticisms up into one, it's the biggest disappointment is the the choice of who to focus on and who not to focus on. That was the big issue all season.
Can we talk about the very end real quick?
Yes. Good. I'm glad you brought this up. Yeah, go for it.
I said to you after, and I've seen this sentiment repeated online now, but it felt like that was like the end of a series, almost not the end of a season, where she's like, because like everyone's storyline kind of like wraps up neatly, like in theory, like they could all end there.
Yeah.
And she's like, I stayed clean the whole rest of the school year. I don't know. It felt weird. It felt almost like they thought this was the end, and then they got picked up for another year.
The whole season, they made some weird narration choices. Out of nowhere, Jules drops in for a quick verse,
which I thought was really interesting at the time, and I was hoping they would do more with that, but
then they don't. And then here at the end of this season, since we know that they're coming back for season 3, maybe it is the conclusion of like high school. Maybe they jump forward because the aging thing is definitely an issue. All of the cast are getting older, and it's going to take another 2 years to get season 3.
Right.
So maybe they flash forward to senior year of college, or they're out of college now, or like maybe they just do the last week of high school, whatever it is. I feel like a flash forward is coming.
The summer after senior year.
Right. Something's going to happen here where, because there's no reason that you would put that in unless you had the intention of skipping over some stuff.
Yeah. And I think like for me, I don't need the end of the season to end on a cliffhanger. In fact, sometimes I think that's like kind of corny to do. But I would like to be able to have like some sense of like the direction we're going in with the story to compel me for, the next season when it's going to be in like 2 years, 3 years, whatever.
Yeah.
And I don't know where the story is going right now. Like with Succession, we know where we're heading with that story, or at least we have like a starting point of where like the next chapter of that story is going to go. With Barry, that's coming back soon.
Yes.
We know where that story is going to at least start out next year. And I don't know like what path we're going down here.
And that is sort of like a dangerous place almost to be creatively, where like you basically finish the story. There's still things that have to get resolved, obviously, but like this is the end of book 1 and then book 2 starts next, as opposed to this is the end of chapter 1 and then chapter 2 starts next.
Yeah, I'm not looking forward to hearing some story about, Sam Levinson coming in and being like, what's the craziest thing we could do in season 3?
So, I don't know, maybe like Cassie and Maddie become friends again.
No, there's aliens.
Oh, yeah, Sam. Anyway, so that was this season. I don't know where they're going with season 3. They could go anywhere. Lori is still out there, like you said. Rue still owes money. Rue's going to be sober. Is Jules even going to be in season 3?
Who knows?
I don't know. But this was a fun season of television to watch as creative people, because I think that if it all went perfectly, I don't know if I would have learned as much about like television writing as I did by I would argue, mistakes that were made in the season.
Right.
Sam Levinson would argue that they were not mistakes. They were intentional and just creative differences.
That's fine.
And that's fine. But the stuff that didn't work in the season was helpful. It was, it definitely assisted me in thinking about storytelling and writing and stuff.
Yeah, I learned a lot watching this season. I think I am a better storyteller and creative for having watched it. There are things from this season that I'm going to like take and be like, oh, that's really good. And there's things I'm like, I didn't really enjoy that, so I'm not going to do that in my stuff. I don't want like everyone to get the impression that like we hated this and that we thought it was awful. It was like, I think it's incredibly well made. I think the cast is incredible. I just think like sometimes the writing leaves a little bit to be desired.
And I would love to talk to Sam Levinson about it. So Sam, if by some miracle you stumble upon this podcast and you're just heated listening to us talk, don't be. We appreciate you. We would love to talk to you about this season, and maybe you could change our minds.
This goes for all the other characters on the show too.
This goes for every creative professional in the industry. Talk to us and also finance our projects.
Give me money.
All right. That has been Euphoria Season 2. Jack Hubert, Daniel Elmore, thank you for listening along every week. If you have been, tune in for more TV reviews coming in the future. We mentioned Barry will be coming out soon. We'll be reviewing that, as well as a number of other shows, movies, sports, pop culture moments, bunch of stuff, more sketch comedy, more short films, docuseries. We're going to be working a lot this year on the channel. We're really excited about what we're going to be giving out to the world. So stay tuned, and we'll see you then.